Hi, my name is Rachel, and welcome back to my channel. This will be my September wrap up, and I had a really great reading month in September overall. I feel like in September my reading got off to a bit of a slower start, but I finished out the month super strong thanks to the help of Banned Book Weeks. I was really excited that week to pick up everything that I was reading and just read a lot in general. For some reason that week just really upped the reading mojo for me. In September, I read 9 books in total. And if you can believe it, I had 5 5-star books, 3 4-star books, and only 1 3-star book. Out of these 9 books, 6 of them were fiction and 3 of them were nonfiction. I only read 1 fantasy this month, so unlike me. I read 2 horror, 3 memoirs, 1 dystopian, 1 children's, and 1 historical fiction. And the formats that I read in this month were 5 ebooks, 1 physical book, and 3 on audio. Without further ado, let's talk about the books I read. The first book that I finished in September was Lucy Undying by Kiersten White. And this is a Dracula-inspired reimagining. So in the original Dracula tale, we have a character named Lucy Westenra, and she is just kind of like a victim in passing. We don't really know anything about her or anything about her life. And this book is the answer to the question, well, what happened to Lucy? What was her life actually like? What was she like before Dracula? How did she meet him? And what happened to her afterwards? This book was phenomenal. I could not put it down. I think the writing in here was really like witty, a little bit pretentious, but in a way that, like, you know, it's a vampire story, so like there's supposed to be that pretentious atmosphere, and it was sapphic. And also I just think the cast of characters in general was really like interesting, and even some of the side characters really shone through as well. The story is told in a format where we get diary entries from Lucy's life as a human, like, teenage girl, and then we also get another POV of a human woman named Iris who is finding Lucy's journal entries, and she's kind of reading them a little bit after we do, and we're seeing her story as well. And then we also get a present day Lucy, which is set in 2025, and she's talking to a therapist, and we're reading the transcript of their therapy sessions, and it's Lucy disclosing everything that she's been through in her life and kind of narrating like things that she wished she did differently or ways that she felt like she could have done more for the world. And I just found all 3 of these POVs to be so interesting. It's crazy because the diary entries of Lucy as a teenage kid were like my favorite POV at first, and I would argue that they are the most boring because like a lot of it is just like her getting pushed around by men and just men in general thinking they know what's best for women and treating women like shit. But like arguably just Lucy's personality even as a kid was just so like endearing, and like I really felt for her. I feel like she wanted to be brave, but she didn't have the right circumstances to do that anyways. And in Iris's POV, she's essentially on the run. Her mother has just died. She's running away from this legacy that she's left her because her mom ran a health empire, and Iris is like, I don't want anything to do with that. You people are in a fucking cult. Like, you're weird. Like, I don't want to be a part of it. So she goes to London to a family home that was left to her, and she's trying to get some antiques and sell them and make some cash so she can skedaddle on out of there. But obviously things go awry, and I won't say anything else. Everything I've said so far has been in the synopsis or within the first like 3 or 4 chapters. But yeah, I had a great time reading it. I think that it was definitely feminist, a little pretentious. There was a lot of queer rep in here. It got like a little creepy in places. There was a lot of female rage, and I just think it was a blast. It was just a fun, like vampy, campy time, and it was perfect to get me in the mood for spooky season. I literally finished this book a few days after I decorated my shelves, and I could not have been in like a better autumnal spooky vampire mood in that moment. Like, it was just perfect. The next book I read in September was Malice by John Gwynne. This is the first book in the Faithful and the Fallen series, and if you're new here, hi, my name's Rachel, and I'm obsessed with the Bloodsworn saga. It is my entire personality. I finished Fear of the Gods because I had an arc, and I literally picked up Malice like 5 seconds later, and I was like, I just need more John Gwynn immediately into my eyeballs. This book is hard to explain. We follow a variety of characters in this world, and essentially they have some like lore and legends and lost texts that predict certain things happening, and when those certain things happen, it's kind of like a bad omen. Like, if all of these things start happening, like, prepare for war, some shit's gonna go down. And so we follow a bunch of characters. Some of them are good, some of them fucking suck. I loved all of them, even though like there are definitely characters in here that I hate, but after having read the entire book, those chapters that I like, you know, I'm like, ugh, like I don't like this guy. Like those chapters like were so important. So in this world, which is, I think it's called the Banished Lands, there's so much history of like war, men versus giants. There used to be gods, and they had all these creatures that, you know, like worms and drakes and the just odd wolf creatures. So I only gave this like a 4.25, 4.5 stars, because I do think the beginning was just a little bit slow. However, I loved the world building and I loved the atmosphere, and I really, really loved the characters in here. So I know that if and when I reread this, I will absolutely be giving it a 5-star. I should have just given it a 5 stars because I know that that will happen, but for the sake of honesty, I did only give it about a 4.25, 4.5, just because it was a tad slow. I would say maybe this much of the book was slow until it really was like, every page was just so exciting after that. But I say slow, but it wasn't bad. It was just taking its time and building the tension. And I don't know if it's because I just came off of the high of the epic conclusion to the Bloodsworn trilogy, but that switch from like action, 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 action to picking up this book and then having to start a new series, you know, it's the beginning of a series. You start over, it's a slow. So, but either way, I loved it. I love John Gwynn. I can't wait to read book 2. My book club, The Reading Realm, is going to be reading book 2 in November. So if you haven't read Malice yet, you can read it in October and then catch up with us in November. My Discord for the book club is linked in the description below if you want to join us. Highly, highly recommend this book and John Gwynn in general. So feel free to join us if this is on your radar. The next couple of books I'm going to talk about are all books that I read and discussed at length in my banned books reading vlog. So I'm not gonna talk about them too much, but I will give a quick wrap up here for you as well. So during banned book weeks, I read When Aiden Became a Brother, and this is a children's picture book that I read to my son about a young boy named Aiden who was born a girl, realized at some point during his life that he is a boy, and then how his parents reacted to that, and how Aiden is going to have a baby sibling and what that means for him. And it was really cute. It was a really good conversation starter with my son because he asked me a lot of questions like, why did he want to be a boy if he was born a girl? And he asked me about gender and what did that mean, and it was really cute, and the art was adorable and the story was really adorable. So if you have a kid, highly recommend. I gave this a 5-star. It's a picture book, but it deserves it, so gave it the 5 stars. I also read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. This book is about a girl named Pecola Breedlove and her life in the 1940s. Unfortunately, her life is not very good. She suffers a lot of racism and neglect and abuse from her parents, and she is also a victim of rape and incest, and her story is very harrowing and poignant, but the author's writing is very lyrical and beautiful. There's a lot of vivid imagery and it hits you in the gut, and it was definitely a story that made me sit and think about just what I was hearing and it made me think about what I was thinking. Am I okay? It just made me sit and think about a lot of things, especially having the author narrate it herself really added an extra layer to that because I got to hear how she wanted it to sound. I gave this a 4-star. The next book I read in September was Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. This is a memoir. It actually is a graphic novel as well, but the audiobook has a full cast of characters, music and sound effects, and it was really immersive immersive listening experience. I felt like I was just sitting on my couch having a coffee with Maya, and Maya was telling me about air life and about just awkward, like, high school situations and sexual identity crisis and awkward college situations. And there was a layer of like humor to it that the author kind of had in hindsight, looking back on some things that E had been through. But there was also, some sad moments and hard to listen to moments. And I just really felt for the author. Like, if I could, I would just give Em a hug and just let him know that it's okay. But yeah, this was a really great listen. It's only 2 hours on audio, so if you're in the market for a quick non-fic that was very, very good, highly recommend. In September, I also read Fahrenheit 451. Now, this book is a classic, and it's about a fireman who doesn't put out fires. He actually goes to houses, burns books, and then burns the houses, as well as, being part of getting the people arrested for reading books. And this book started out so well for me. I really thought some of the metaphors and the writing was beautiful and like unique. I felt like it portrayed anxiety really well, and also definitely had commentary that is relatable even today about book banning, society, media, I guess. And I did really, really love like the first 60%, and unfortunately the last half kind of fell flat for me. And because of that, I gave it like a 3.5, 375, but it was still really good, and I do highly recommend reading it. It's really short, and I still think it's worth your time, even though the ending didn't really hit home for me. I do think that it will resonate with a lot of people. The next thing I read was a graphic novel memoir called Banned Book Club by Kim Yun-suk, and this was so hard to put down. I read it in one sitting. This is the story of Yun-suk as she's going to college in South Korea. I believe it's in 1983, and she gets entangled in a group of friends who are activists and read banned books, and they kind of open up Yun-suk's eyes to the fascism that's going on in their country, and we slowly start seeing her as she learns the truth and becomes more active in fighting back, and just her story. And then at the end, there is a little bit of a glimpse into her future, or I guess it would be her past now, or I guess it would be her present now, but in the context of the memoir, we see her past, and then it's essentially like her future. And it's got a very strong message, and there is just like a little underlying kernel of hope in there. And I really thought it was beautifully written, even though it is like a graphic novel, obviously. And just the way that those two things came together was so beautifully done, and I really loved this one. 5 stars. This will linger with me for a long time. And the last thing I read during Banned Books Week is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is another memoir, and through some personal essays, we learn about the author's life as a young queer Black kid and his story of dealing with bullies and exploring sexual identity, how he suffered some abuse that was like a very subtle thing, and then in hindsight he realized what had happened, but also the story of how his family members just were such an essential part of his life. And then we follow him through high school, college, and it's just a really great resource, I think, for young queer folk. What am I trying to say? Who need someone that they can relate to. This was another memoir that really just felt like I was sitting on my couch having a coffee, listening to somebody tell me their ups and downs and the bad things that they've been through, as well as some good things that they went through. And I highly recommend this one if you are striving to be a better ally, because I think that this really highlights a lot of subtleties that can happen in people's bigotry. And also, I just think it's important for you to listen to experiences of people who are different than yourself, so you can gain empathy for that. Because honestly, after reading this story, like, again, I just felt like I wanted to hug him and just kind of say like, thank you for sharing like your story with me. Again, 5 stars, highly recommend. And the next thing I read in September is Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. This comes out on October 29th. I was lucky enough to get an arc of it on NetGalley, and this was really great. It was so perfect for the autumnal season, and there was such a spooky, eerie, just creepy atmosphere to it. In this book, we follow a high school senior senior named Andrew, and we see his life kind of unfolding as he starts school for the senior year. Andrew is a writer and he finds solace in writing like creepy, dark fairy tales and like horror stories. And his best friend Andrew is an artist who sometimes brings those fairy tales to life. He is really good at drawing monsters and just creatures of the forest, and the two of them are just like the perfect pair of friends. And we follow them during their senior year of school at this prep school, and there is a forest next to the school, and wouldn't you know, the forest just happens to be super creepy and weird, and crazy shit starts happening at their school. And I thought this was really, really good. I do think it was just like a little bit over the top in some places with like the angst in the writing. However, I love angst in general, and the writing was beautiful. Don't get me wrong, the writing was beautiful, lyrical, the descriptions were super lush, and I think that this is perfect for September, October, November, like that autumnal feeling. And it had a lot of great foresty imagery, and there were some creepy things that happened, and it actually got really, really dark in some places for a YA. So I was very, very impressed by this one, and I gave it a 4.25 stars. So check it out if you're interested when it comes out in October. And that's everything I read in the month of September. I had a great reading month, again, like I said, which surprised me because I also had a really busy month in September. If you've made it this far in the video, leave a skull emoji down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!